So we are about to finish the Meloch of Tod, and there are several incidental considerations which we'll learn about, including that letting an animal or an insect go free can sometimes involve other Melochos. Not Sod, of course, because it's the opposite of Sod, but incidentally, you may be violating other Melochos. So let's learn about capturing an animal that has bitten someone. So you don't need the animal for itself, but you need to examine the animal. Okay, who's around? Anne, Eleni?
I'm happy to read.
Eleni, go ahead.
Capturing an animal that has bitten a person. A dog or other animal that attacked and bit a person may be captured on Shabbos or Yom Tov because it is necessary to examine the animal to determine if it is infected with rabies. This information is important in order to know how to properly treat the patient and could have life-saving importance. Appropriate authorities should then be contacted to retrieve the animal.
So the main point is that this is a question of pikuach nefesh, and therefore you do whatever is necessary. Okay, that's all he's
If a
saying.
wild bird flew into the house, if a small wild bird accidentally flew into the house, one should open windows and doors and encourage it to escape. If one is not successful in chasing the bird out, and leaving doors and windows open will cause the house to become uncomfortable, the doors and windows may be closed because the entrapment of the bird inside the house is a rabbinic level of confinement, which is permitted when one has no interest in the bird. And leaving the doors or windows open would impose a hardship.
Why is it a rabbinic level of confinement?
Is it because there's still space in the house for the bird to fly, even though it's not its natural place?
Also not
How
a
about
wild
kavana? How about
And you don't
kavana?
want it.
It's not
Because
a
the
bird you
bird's
capture
already
for other
trapped.
reasons.
So
The bird's
number
already
one is
trapped
the
and it can't get
Melochos
out.
she'eino tzricha legufa. Number two, this is the bird which is not normally trapped. Nobody's interested in it generally. So ein beminoi nitzod. Not the type of thing that's trapped, and you don't intend to trap it. That's not your interest. And the last thing is that closing the doors is the normal way that people, the windows is the normal way that people live. You're not doing an action in order to trap it, on the contrary. Okay.
One may also force the bird into an individual room of the house to keep it at bay, because a small wild bird that is confined to a room is not considered trapped on a midoraisa level, since it can still elude capture by flying from one corner of the room to the other. However, under no circumstances may one trap the bird into a small closet, cabinet, box, or crate.
All right.
Rabbi,
So
I ask a
that would
question.
be a proper sod. The other considerations are still there. This is not the kind of bird that you're trapping. You don't want it. But midrabanan, it would be a proper kind of sod. Yes. Question?
Rabbi, the bird will probably be very frightened. And I think it would be really a kindness to the bird to catch it in order to release it outside and give it its freedom.
Okay. But the the distress of the bird in this case is not so great that you would be allowed to violate directly an Isur de Rabbanon. After all, you gave him a chance, right? You offered him lots of opportunity to fly out the doors, the windows. All right, so you did your thing. However, the fact that it's under distress would not allow you to directly violate an Issa D'Rabbanan.
Setting traps. One is not permitted to set any kind of trap on Shabbos, with the exception of dangerous situations, see D above, even though the animal only becomes caught later on its own. Example, one may not set a spring trap or glue trap on Shabbos to catch rodents, even though the mouse will become trapped only through its own movements and only after the act of setting the trap was completed. However, if it is, of course, perfectly permitted to set a trap before Shabbos, even though an animal will become trapped on Shabbos. This is no different from turning on lights and household appliances, example, a fridge or stove, before Shabbos and allowing them to remain operating during Shabbos, which is permitted.
Interesting that in the Gemara, this is a big discussion between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai maintained that, in fact, you cannot have your kelim do melacha for you. So you would have to make the trap hefker, free for anybody to take the trap or the contents, if you were going to set it before Shabbos, because your kelim are still doing the melacha. So it's because we hold like Beis Hillel that there is no prohibition on, there's no commandment on shvisas kelim. Your kelim don't have to rest. Your equipment doesn't need to be given a rest on Shabbos. Your animals do, but not your equipment. That's why you're allowed to do all these things before Shabbos and have them continue their activity into Shabbos. Is this a gromo? Is this a causative kind of melacha? After all, there's a delay between when you set the trap. If a person set a trap on Shabbos, there's a delay between when he set the trap and when the trapping actually happens. And when it does happen, it happens, as he writes, as a result of the animal, let's say the mouse's movement. You don't catch the mouse. You get the mouse to catch itself. So is that a groma? Would that be therefore permitted? So in fact, we see it in one other place, and that is in a case of a person who does the separating between the chaff and the grain through winnowing. And winnowing means throwing the grain up into the air and allowing the air, the wind, to separate the lighter chaff from the heavier kernels. So the chaff will blow away and the kernels will fall back down into the container that you use to throw it up into. So it'll fall back down. That is an av melocha. Even though you are not doing the work, it's the wind that's doing the work, but you're setting it up so that the wind will do the work. As we've learned earlier, the idea of Shabbos is that we relinquish our control over nature. All week long, we exercise control. Hashem told us, Redu, master, the gas hayom, the oif hashomayim, the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky. I have given to you, says Hashem, the mastery over everything around you. On Shabbos, we relinquish that mastery. We hand it back to Hashem. We say, Hashem, it's your world. So we're giving it back to you for one day a week in acknowledgement of the fact that it's your world, and thereby we earn the right to master the world on the other days of the week. Now, paradoxically, the way in which we assert our greatest mastery over the world is when we don't have to do things directly, when we harness nature itself to do the work for us. So throwing something to the wind and letting the wind do the job for you is a greater mastery over the grain than physically manually removing the chaff from the kernels of the grain by yourself. So normally we would say that doing the melacha is much more of a melacha than causing the melacha to happen. In this case, causing the melacha to happen, harnessing the wind, is a greater mastery over nature than physically, manually separating the chaff. Back to the trap. Where do we master the animal more? By running after it with a net and chasing it down like the what's it called? Like the classic image of a housewife chasing the mouse with a broom, or by setting the trap and having the mouse get itself caught. So it's the setting the trap in this case that is the greater mastery. So in a sense, it's more of a meloch. There are differences of opinion whether it's actually sod midaraisa, but it definitely is the melocha of sod. So you can set it before Shabbos, and it'll do the job on Shabbos, but you cannot set it on Shabbos. The one unpleasant thing is that if, in fact, the mouse gets caught on Shabbos, not much you can do with it unless it's in a place where it's visible and therefore revolting, or it smells and it's revolting. So then it becomes a what, which would allow you to move it. What would it be?
It's spoiling Shabbos. It's not Shabbos.
Yeah, but what category would it become that would allow you?
Afshal Re'i.
That is the grapsal re'i, like a bedpan which may be moved because it causes discomfort to people around it. So it may be moved, although essentially it's mukta. So the grapsal re'i is an exception to that mukta. If that mouse was caught and died in a place where, what I mean is that sometimes in the act of being caught, the mouse can move around. So it could be you didn't put the trap there in the first place, but it ends up there in a place where it's either visible and therefore disturbing, or its smell is disturbing. Then you'd be allowed to move it to a place where it wouldn't disturb.
So Rabbi, is a groma then?
It's a groma, but it's a kind of groma which, because
Has
it's
the
a
delay.
groma, it's more of a meloch. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah. Setting
But
traps.
If that mousetrap is in its place the whole week, and unfortunately the mouse happens to go in on Shabbos, that's not causative. That is just it just happened.
How did it just happen?
Because the mouse just decided to go in that direction where you had the trap set up the whole week, and it goes in. We have something called a rat zapper, and it's in place all the time. And if the rat goes in, it goes in.
Okay, but that wasn't set on Shabbos. What I was
No.
talking about is if you set the trap on Shabbos and
No.
it catches the mouse on Shabbos.
Thank
Is
you.
that Is that a groma? Does that go down a level?
Yeah, it's a grammar.
Okay. Releasing trapped animals or insects. Carry on, please.
Allowing an animal to escape. The Meloch of Tzod is limited to the act of confining. Releasing an animal after it was trapped is the opposite of Tzod and is in fact perfectly permissible. Example, if a wild bird accidentally flew into the house, one may open windows and doors to allow it to escape. Conversely, closing windows and doors after it came in should be avoided because this causes the animal to become automatically trapped. Even if the entrapment is unintentional, one should still not do so because of the rule of psik resha. However, if this occurs during the winter season and the house will become cold and uncomfortable, the doors and windows may be closed to warm the house if one is not successful in chasing the bird out. If a fly or similar annoying insect flew to the window but is blocked from leaving by an unopenable window screen, the screen may not be removed even partially to allow the fly to escape because of soser.
Okay.
Insect repellents.
We don't have a lot of these screens around, but he's talking about a screen which is set in place. It's fixed in place. And then kind of disassembling it would be soister, the opposite of boiner. And you're doing it for a constructive purpose to allow the thing to get out. So that would be an isur. But if it's the kind of screen that you normally slip into a window, slip out of the window, it wouldn't be considered soister if you removed it.
Insect repellents.
Hold on. I just wanted to say that this example that he gave is quite unclear. This psik resha that he talked about, if you intended to keep the bird inside the house, that would be a melocha. If you close the window because you normally close the window, that's okay. All right, it's not. You don't have to wait till you get uncomfortable and then close the window because you're uncomfortable. If it is the normal thing to do to close the windows, let's say afternoon, it's starting to get cold, so you may close the window even though the bird is in the house. And it's a psik resha of a drabonon. If you close the window and cause the bird to be trapped, since number one, you don't need the bird. Number two, it's not the kind of thing that's normally trapped. It's a double drabonon. So it would be a psik resha of a double drabonon, which is permissible. But the idea that trumps everything else over here is that you normally close windows. It's not an act of trapping. It's not a matter of whether you intend or you don't intend. Even if you did not normally close the window and you closed it because you decided to close it for whatever reason, it would be a psik resha. But it's a psik resha that causes an act which is doubly drabonon. So that would also be okay. But beyond all considerations of whether you intend or don't intend psik resha, no psik resha, beyond all that is the fact that windows are normally closed. So if you go about your life normally, the fact that there is a bird in the house doesn't change the nature of closing the window. It is not an act of trapping. It is part of the normal function of the house. Okay?
Insect repellents.
Insect repellents, yeah.
One may spray insect repellents on his skin, not clothes, to deter insects from attacking or coming close to him. Similarly, a thin lotion or oil insect repellent, not cream, may also be smeared on the skin. Confining a human being. According to most poskim, the Meloch of Tzod does not apply to the capturing and confining of humans. However, some poskim hold that capturing and holding a loose mental patient or prison escapee is indeed the prohibition of Tzod. However, grabbing an unruly child to discipline him is permissible in any case. Examples of Tzod: forcing a bird to its cage.
Let him finish first, and then we'll take questions.
Or even simply closing the cage door to prevent it from escaping, setting a mouse trap, pest strip, etc. Note, these items are also muktzah and may not be handled on Shabbos.
Now, they're muktzah because using them would be a melocha. If there was no melocha of tzod, they would not be muktzah. As I keep on reminding you, the muktzah always comes after the melocha, because using something is the melocha. The object with which the melocha is done becomes muktzah. It's a non-usable item on Shabbos, so it's muktzah. Yeah, question.
Rabbi Weinberg, can you spray insect repellent on the bed linen on Shabbos? Because I've been bitten so much now, and I just want to know if I see now you can spray it on yourself, but can you spray it on the bed linen?
All right. The spraying on the bed linen involves moiled reach. You are fragrancing the clothes or the bed linen. If it's not a fragrance kind of spray, and if it doesn't clean the linen just by spraying, then you would be allowed to spray it on clothes or linen. But as I told you before, your best option is to put on a fan. That gets rid of the insects much better than the insect spray. It's healthier. And
a fan.
F-A-N.
Oh.
So it'll also avoid Shabbos issues. But generally, it's a much better solution.
Okay, thank you.
They'll probably
Rabbi?
better. Yes.
Is spraying room spray or some perfume in atmospheric spray also moiled reach, even though it's not going on clothes or fabric, it's just in the room?
If it's meant to banish a bad smell, a deodorant is fine. If it's meant to create a smell, then it's not. Then you shouldn't do that. If you're interested in that particular smell, then you don't do it on Shabbos. If you want to remove, let's say, a bathroom deodorant or something near a rubbish bin where there's a bad smell, then you can put on that thing which takes away the bad smell.
Thank you.
Now, the Melocha of Tzod, in many, many cases, results in killing the animal. So, in Shulchan Aruch, the Melocha of Tzod and the Melocha of Shechita go together in one siman. That's the usual consequence of Tzod, that the animal dies. Is there a Melocha of Tzod if you directly kill the animal? That's a subject of dispute, because when you kill the animal, obviously you trapped it. But in any case, there's a separate Melocha of Shechita, which is defined as Netilas Neshama, anything which causes a living thing to lose life to lose blood. Adam hu nefesh, blood is life. So anything which would cause the animal to lose its life or to be wounded in a way that its blood would flow, by the way, person 2, is netilas neshoma. That's under the Melocha of Shechita, which is the next one in the order of Melochos. So let's just cover the basic premise of Shechita on page 887. And after that, I'll take questions and we'll leave it there. Shechita.
Introduction, Shechita in the Mishkan. Before removing the skin of the ram and of the tachash required for the coverings of the Mishkan, the animals first had to be slaughtered. Doing this was the Melocha of Shechita. The basic premise of Shechita. Although the definition of this Melocha seems to...
Remember that every single Shabbos, the actual Melocha of Shechita was done in the Mishkan and Mikdash because korbanos were offered on Shabbos. So that overrides all the Melochas. In other words, the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash itself involves Shechita. It involved flaying the animal, taking off the skin, which will be a future Melocha. It involved burning, lighting a fire, everything that was done in the course of the avodah of Shabbos. So where we learn the prohibition of Shechita from is from those actions that were done. Where we learn all the Melochos from is from those actions that were done in preparation for the construction of the Mishkan. In the course of making the Mishkan. Remember, the two psukim which are juxtaposed in Chumash, and we learn from this proximity that the Torah always puts them together. We learn that what is considered Melocha as far as Shabbos is concerned. Torah didn't say what's considered Melocha. It just said don't do Melocha. So how do you define Melocha? You define it in the way that Torah said, right next to the prohibition of Melocha, make a Mishkan. So those things which were done in making the Mishkan are considered Melocha for Shabbos. That's what we learned from that Torah's putting together Lomo Nismecho Shabbos L'Melechas HaMishkan. Why was Shabbos put next to the prohibition of Melocha? Why was Shabbos put next to the commandment to make a Mishkan? So what we're learning here is not the Shechita that was done in the course of the avodah. That Shechita is the override Shabbos, is the commandment to do it on Shabbos. So we're looking for where was Shechita done in the process of constructing the Mishkan. So there we had to have the skins, the hides of various animals, and getting that involved Shechita. So that we learn that Shechita is a Melocha. Carry on, please.
The basic premise. Although the definition of this Melocha seems to imply ritual slaughtering, the two have little in common beyond the fact that they are both methods of taking the life of a living creature. That is to say, the Melocha of Shechita is by no means limited to the act of Shechita. Any method of killing.
The picture is very misleading. The picture of a Shechita knife is very misleading. You could have had a picture of a dead animal. That would have been more to the point.
Any method of killing is Shechita. The basic premise of Shechita is netilas neshama, i.e., literally taking the soul. Therefore, ending the life of a living being by any method of Shechita, whether this is accomplished by poisoning, drowning, crushing, asphyxiating, electrocuting, or actually slaughtering. Examples: One may not shake an insect from a towel, plate, etc. into the toilet and certainly not flush it. One may not step upon an insect, thereby crushing it to death. One may not spread poison or spray insecticide to kill an insect. Causing mortal injury. Mortally wounding a healthy, i.e. viable living creature is the Meloch of Shechita, even if the creature does not die until after Shabbos. Example. Spraying insecticide upon an insect is Shechita, even if the insect does not die right away. Similarly, poisoning an animal would be Shechita, even though it may take several hours or even until after Shabbos for the poison to take its effect. Killing a mortally ill animal. It is questionable whether killing a mortally ill or wounded animal is the Melocha Midoraisa of Shechita. In any case, doing so is not actually permitted. Mercy killing situations are common examples of this shaila. One who knows example.
Ella, do you notice? You asked me about the mercy trapping of a bird.
Yes,
So
yes.
here, this is the example of the mercy killing. Example.
One who notices a badly wounded bird or similar creature and perceives that it is suffering great pain may not kill it on Shabbos to put it out of its misery. However, he may apprise a non-Jew of the problem and allow the non-Jew to kill the animal. Killing
Rabbi
almost
Wineberg,
Stop here. We'll stop here. Yes, questions.
okay, Rabbi Wineberg, what about ants? Can you throw ants down the sink if you got full of ants and it's all over a cup? Can you wash it off?
You're killing the ants directly by washing the cup. You should rather get the ants off the cup and then throw out, let's say, the tissue with which you have all the ants on them, and throw out the tissue. But don't pour water over it.
If you get it for the tissue, you're killing the ants because they're so delicate.
No. Don't kill the ants. Just take the tissue to remove the ants, and then throw away the tissue.
Can I ask a question about the ants, please? If you've dropped something and you wake up in the morning in your kitchen and there are just hundreds of ants over this particular piece of food that you didn't realize that you had dropped in the evening, can you spray ant spray? I mean, I know that it's going to kill them, obviously, or do you just leave them all over your kitchen while you've got guests coming and whatever? It's a bit of a dilemma.
You don't have to leave them.
It's happened to me, so yeah.
You can
pick up the food and throw it away. With the ants on
Obviously,
it.
but the ants remained. The ants still remained. They were there. They just like, yeah.
If there's a residue on the floor,
Mm.
and that's attracting the ants, then sweep the ants away with a broom.
Okay.
Non-aggressively, non-violently. You're not
Right.
killing them. Sweep
Yeah.
them away. Wash
Yeah.
the part of the floor where the residue is, so they won't
Yeah.
come back.
Thank
And
you.
You're done with it.
Good, thank you.
Spraying insecticide onto an insect is shoichet.
Yeah, I heard that. That's why I was asking you. Yeah.
Manually killing. Yeah. Okay. Notice, by the way, that when it comes to the melocha of shoichet, unlike the melocha of tzod, there is no distinction made between whether it's normally killed or not normally killed. In the case of trapping, we distinguish between beminoi nitzod and ein beminoi nitzod, whether this is a species which is normally trapped or not. But in the case of shoichet, whatever it is, killing it is shoichet. That's actually the next section. Yeah.
Rabbi, a quick question. By sweeping a dirty floor where there are lots of ants, inevitably or very likely an ant will get squashed or more than one and killed. The same with when you're getting ants off a cleave with a tissue. Is that something to be worried about? Is that also intention. I mean, it's not intentional, but are we guilty?
That's why I said you should sweep it non-aggressively, sweep it gently, so it's not inevitable that you'll kill the ant. If you
Possible.
end up killing the ant, it's a dover she'ein miskaven. You did it without intention, and it's a melochos she'ein tzricha legufa. You're not collecting dead ants. That's
Okay.
not your purpose. So it would be okay.
Rabbi, then do you shake that tissue outdoors? Obviously, you don't put it in the dustbin because that would be trapping.
Why is it trapping?
Because you're putting the ant in the dustbin.
I don't know that the ants are more confined in the dustbin than they would be anywhere. But it's just a good idea to throw the tissue outside.
Outside, shake it off outside.
I don't know if you shake it off. Leave the tissue there.
Just leave it there, right?
I mean, I don't know. You want to use the tissue after shaking off the ants? No. So just throw out the tissue. Finish.
Thank you.
Next. Yeah. Any other questions?
Would the same apply to a blanket? Now, if a blanket, you leave a blanket and the blanket is covered in ants. Now, could you shake that? You can shake that outside to bring the blanket in?
Good, good. You could shake out the blanket, get rid of the ants, and then bring in the blanket. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you don't put the blanket into water for two reasons. Number one,
No.
because of the
Laundry.
and number two, because laundering the blanket.
Right. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Rabbi, in terms of the form and it's very thin, do you, even if you think that it's not a thick cream, but it's more liquid, do you still have to press it into the face, or can you smear it because it's more liquid form?
If it's
Or is there a
liquid,
gray area?
you may rub it in.
You
But
can
if
rub
it's
it.
if it's a cream, then it's a problem. Remember,
that's
I
what I'm
told
battling
you
to define.
test it.
I
told
know,
you to
you're
test
squeezing it and
by
letting it fall out.
That's it.
Yeah.
But
if you're squeezing the tube, if you have to squeeze the tube and it falls out and drips out, or if it sprays, and that's what's confusing me. The spray could be a cream inside there, or is it because it is thin?
Very, very unlikely that you would spray a cream. I can't
They make it
imagine.
thin.
It's so thin, it's completely insubstantial. So
Yes.
You're not flattening anything. You're not mareach anything by rubbing it into your skin. It's
Yes.
only something which is thick. It has a substance. Then
Yes, it won't fall out. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we done? Next week will be our last shiur before Pesach, right? Yeah. We're already into Nisan. So if anybody has questions about Pesach, please prepare them in advance. I'll set aside more time in Yis Hashem next Wednesday for questions about Pesach, and we'll take it from there. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi. Be well.
Will you be in town, Rabbi? Will you be in town?
Yes, Mitch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Have a lovely
Bye-bye.
day.